Some cars were so strange, so flawed, or so ahead of their time, they were practically erased from the history books. Buckle up as we revisit 20 American cars the automakers would rather you forget ever existed. The Chevrolet Vega. The Chevrolet Vega. They said it was the future. What we got instead was a masterclass in how to botch a promising idea with almost surgical precision. Enter the Chevrolet Vega, a car that looked sleek in brochures and disintegrated in reality. Launched during the 1970s fuel crunch, the Vega was GM's shiny featherweight answer to rising gas prices and the Japanese invasion. On paper, it had all the right notes: compact, affordable, vaguely sporty. For young buyers, it whispered dreams of freedom, wrapped in a stylish metal shell. But by 40,000 miles, that shell started to look like Swiss cheese. Rust didn't nibble, it devoured. Owners peeled back floor mats and saw sunlight where there shouldn't be any. The sheet metal was so thin, you'd think GM forged it out of soda cans. And then came the aluminum block engine, a supposed marvel of lightweight engineering that couldn't handle heat. Overheating, warped heads, and spontaneous mechanical drama became the Vega's tragic symphony. One former owner joked that he got to know his mechanic better than some of his in-laws. That about sums it up. In the end, the Vega wasn't just a flawed car. It was a warning label on wheels. Proof that cost-cutting and ambition don't always mix. A car designed to lead the compact revolution, but mostly just led people straight to the service bay. The Chevrolet Monte Carlo 1970s. The Chevrolet Monte Carlo 1970s. It looked like a muscle car until you stepped on the gas and realized you'd just woken up a very stylish couch. That was the Monte Carlo experience in the mid-1970s. Big attitude on the outside, soft whispers on the inside. Chevy dressed it to impress. A sweeping hood, chrome accents wide enough to signal passing aircraft, and body lines that practically begged for admiration at every red light. It screamed power, but mumbled compromise the moment you put it in drive. One buyer, still star-eyed from the showroom lights, thought he was signing up for a street brawler in a tuxedo. What he got was more of a ballroom dancer with arthritis. The car had presence, no doubt, but performance, well, that got left behind, somewhere between the oil embargo and smog regulations. The engines were choked, the curb weight was heroic, and braking felt more like negotiating with gravity than actually slowing down. Still, there were things to love, like the ride. It floated like a cloud and hugged nothing. The seats were less bucket, more recliner. Road trips? Glorious. Cornering? Forget it. In the end, the Monte Carlo was the automotive equivalent of dating someone gorgeous who bored you to tears. Beautiful, composed, even elegant. But when you wanted passion, it just stared back, politely sipping gas. The AMC Gremlin. What happens when you take a sensible, compact car design, saw off the trunk, and send it straight to market without asking a second opinion? You get the AMC Gremlin, a car so odd it somehow crossed the line into being endearing. Almost. Born into the chaos of the early 70s fuel crisis, the Gremlin was AMC's budget-friendly swing at the small car boom. And swing is right. It landed like a punchline with fenders, with its sloped rear, chopped-off back end, and aggressively awkward stance. It looked like a Hot Wheels prototype that escaped the drawing board, but for a lot of folks, including one guy who bought a '72 model fresh off the lot, it was their first real car. It was cheap, nimble, and surprisingly zippy with the optional inline-six. Parking was a breeze. Gas mileage was solid, and it even had enough torque to embarrass heavier cars. Briefly, then came the rust. Not just rust, structural disintegration. Floors went soft, panels bubbled, and entire rocker panels vanished like they had a death wish. Add to that an interior that rattled like a bingo cage, and mechanical systems that treated reliability as optional. And the charm wore off quick. Still, people remember it. Not fondly maybe, But you remember, and that counts for something. The 1971 Ford Maverick. The 1971 Ford Maverick. It looked like a Mustang that had skipped leg day. With its long hood, short rear deck, and fastbackish profile, the '71 Ford Maverick gave off just enough attitude to make you think it might bite until you actually drove it. I picked mine up because I was broke and optimistic. It promised sporty style on a blue-collar budget, and that sounded just right. Under the hood was an inline-six that could get you across town, assuming you weren't too much of a hurry. It was reliable, sure, but about as thrilling as a washing machine on spin cycle. Acceleration? Mostly noise. Wind resistance felt like a second braking system, and if you dared challenge traffic at a red light, you'd better have had a head start and a prayer. But I'll give it this, Ford nailed the design. From a distance, it looked sharp. With enough squinting, you could almost believe it was a muscle car. Just don't look too close. The rust showed up early and spread like gossip. Fenders, rockers, paint, none of it stood a chance. Still, it was simple, easy to fix, cheap to own. Just not the kind of car you tell stories about. Unless you're laughing. And yeah, I sold it. No regrets, no nostalgia, just relief. The 1958 Edsel Pacer. The 1958 Edsel Pacer. Few cars have managed to look like they were trying to land on the moon and sell groceries at the same time, but the Edsel Pacer pulled it off. One glance at that infamous horse collar grille, and you knew you were dealing with something that didn't come from the usual Detroit blueprint. Ford had big dreams with this one. The Pacer wasn't just another car. It was a whole new brand meant to sit somewhere between Mercury and Lincoln and maybe steal a few Cadillac buyers while it was at it. With its space-age dashboard, push-button drive controls, and oversized ambitions, it promised a driving experience no one would forget. Unfortunately, people didn't forget for all the wrong reasons. The public just wasn't ready for a car that looked like a rolling appliance catalog. Sales tanked, jokes spread, and the Edsel quickly earned a reputation as one of the biggest flops in auto history. But here's the twist. It was actually a solid car underneath the awkward flair. Smooth ride, decent power, and comfort for days. These days, the same Pacer that once drew laughs now turns heads at car shows. Timing might have doomed it in '58, but hindsight made it a cult classic with a price tag to prove it. The Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto. What do you get when you mix cost-cutting with a poorly placed gas tank and call it innovation? Apparently a bestseller, at least for a while. Rolling into the market during an era of oil shocks and economic strain, the Pinto positioned itself as the practical American answer to rising gas prices. It was compact, light on fuel, and just affordable enough to tempt young buyers and tight-budgeted families alike. For a while, it seemed like Ford had cracked the code for a modern, efficient ride. But beneath the thriftiness and tidy design lurked a danger no one expected in a grocery getter. That rear-mounted fuel tank, tucked too close to the bumper, had a catastrophic weakness. A minor rear-end collision could ignite the car like a matchbook. And while Ford had every opportunity to fix it, they didn't. The cost of retooling was deemed too high. So they gambled with consumer safety, and the backlash was brutal. The Pinto became synonymous with failure. Not for poor performance, but for what it symbolized. A car built for saving money became a lesson in what happens when saving lives isn't part of the calculation. Owners didn't just trade them in, they distanced themselves. What was once America's fuel-efficient darling now exists mainly as a warning from history. The Ford Mustang II. The Ford Mustang II. Some cars were born to run, others were born to comply. The Mustang II, it felt like it was born to apologize. By 1974, the dream of roaring muscle cars was sputtering under the weight of smog rules, sky-high gas prices, and insurance rates that could bankrupt a teenager. Ford pivoted hard, shrinking the once wild Mustang into something that could sip fuel, meet regulations, and maybe still turn heads if you squinted from far away. Sure, it had the name. It even had a few visual cues: a long hood, rally stripes, and if you dressed it up just right, it sort of looked the part. But the magic was gone under the hood. The 302 V8, once a beast, felt like it had been tamed with tranquilizers. The exhaust note promised more than the throttle could deliver. Handling was soft, vague, and never inspired confidence. It wasn't so much a pony car as it was a commuter and pony car drag. One former owner put it best: "I bought a Mustang, but it never felt like one." Looking back, the Mustang II did exactly what Ford needed at the time. But for purists, it became the Mustang that flinched, a relic of a moment when survival outranked speed. The Chevrolet Corvair. The Chevrolet Corvair. Slapping a rear engine into an American family car was either a stroke of genius or the opening scene of a cautionary tale. And with the Corvair, it turned out to be both. Chevy's oddball creation from 1960 was supposed to shake up the status quo. No V8 Thunder, no oversized chrome ornaments, just a sleek, low-slung body and a flat-six air-cooled engine mounted in the back like something from Studart. It was the anti-Detroit car, a quiet rebellion on four wheels. And early on, it actually worked. Enthusiasts were drawn to the Corvair's graceful lines, whisper quiet ride, and sporty handling. At lower speeds, it felt nimble, but above 60 miles per hour, especially in a tight corner, the rear suspension liked to improvise. Drivers sometimes felt like they were guiding a well-dressed eel on roller skates. Then Ralph Nader crashed the party, figuratively and all too literally. His book, Unsafe at Any Speed, exposed the Corvair's rear suspension quirks, and overnight, the car became a poster child for automotive recklessness. GM made improvements, but the press and public trust never recovered. Today, the Corvair is remembered not just as a car, but as a cultural pivot point, part engineering experiment, part corporate facepalm. Fascinating, flawed, and unforgettable, even if not always for the right reasons. The 1975 Ford Torino Elite. The 1975 Ford Torino Elite. Ever wonder what would happen if a muscle car and a living room couch had a baby, then sent it off to finishing school? That was the Ford Torino Elite. From the outside, it had the full 1970s glam package. Opera windows, vinyl roof, and a chrome-heavy front end that looked like it belonged in a car commercial, narrated by a man with a velvet voice. It oozed flash and suburban prestige, even if the price tag said otherwise. Slide inside, and you were greeted by wall-to-wall comfort, plush bench seats, faux wood stretching across a dashboard the size of a pool table, and doors that closed with a satisfying thud. It wasn't built to be thrown into curves. It was built for gliding down boulevards, with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the door. The 351 Windsor V8 gave it some promise on paper, but the reality was choked by smog controls and detuned power. Merging onto highways felt more like easing in than launching forward. And the 3-speed automatic transmission took its time thinking things through. As for fuel efficiency, this car practically drank premium for breakfast, but none of that dulled the affection I had for it. It was a soft-spoken heavyweight, a boulevard cruiser with more charisma than common sense. The 1972 Mercury Montego. The 1972 Mercury Montego. Every generation has that one car you didn't realize mattered until it was gone, and gas was $5 a gallon. The Montego was never meant to win drag races or grace magazine covers. It stood tall with quiet confidence, wrapped in a deep green finish, and a grille that looked like it belonged on a courthouse lawn. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. It was honest steel, shaped with purpose. Step inside, and you were met with simplicity done right. The seats had that sofa-like sprawl. The steering wheel had real girth, and the dashboard had enough faux wood to furnish a small cabin. It was the kind of car where road trips felt natural and unhurried. The 302 V8 under the hood didn't rush the experience. Acceleration arrived with calm assurance, and sharp turns were met with gentle persuasion rather than force. You adjusted your pace, not the car's. Sure, it burned fuel like it was going out of style, and parallel parking was more event than task. But what the Montego lacked in glamour, it made up for in grit. Years later, when I spotted one gleaming at a car show, it wasn't nostalgia. It was recognition that unassuming Mercury had stayed the course long after the flashier names had faded. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, hit that like button and stick around. There's a lot more where that came from. The 1968 Dodge Dart. The 1968 Dodge Dart. If cars were people, the 68 Dart would be the quiet guy at the party. Never flashy, never loud, but always the one who helped you move on the weekend and never asked for gas money. It didn't need bold stripes, fat tires, or a thunderous exhaust to prove its worth. The Dart made its case with consistency. Mine came with the 273 V8, modest by muscle car standards, but surprisingly spry and endlessly dependable. It started every morning like it was happy to see you and never made a fuss about bad weather or long commutes. Design-wise, it was all squared edges and practical proportions, like someone built it with a T-square and a sense of responsibility. The cabin didn't overwhelm you with features, but everything worked, and it aged gracefully. On the road, it leaned toward comfort over corner carving. The suspension was soft, the steering relaxed, and the whole driving experience felt like the automotive equivalent of wearing sneakers instead of dress shoes. I eventually traded it in for something newer, something with more flash. But over time, I found myself missing the Dart's honesty. In a world that's always selling you more than it delivers, that old Dodge was a rare kind of truth. Steady, simple, and exactly what it claimed to be. The Chrysler Airflow. The Chrysler Airflow. How do you crash and burn with a car that predicted the future? Easy. Release it before the world is ready and make it too smart for its own good. That was the tragic tale of the Chrysler Airflow. A car so streamlined, so obsessively engineered, it might as well have arrived in a time machine. In 1934, when every other car looked like a rolling phone booth, Chrysler dared to sculpt something out of the future. They tested it in a wind tunnel when nobody else even knew what a wind tunnel was for. They moved the engine forward, balanced the weight, and shaped the body to glide rather than plow through the air. But instead of praise, they got panic. The public wasn't asking for a revolution. They wanted running boards, fender gaps, and upright grills, not a space-age sled with headlights tucked inside the body. Rumors of weak frames didn't help, and once the ugly label stuck, the Airflow's fate was sealed. Today, collectors call it a misunderstood masterpiece. Restored examples float down the road with eerie quietness, reminding us that brilliance sometimes arrives before its time. And when it does, the world tends to look the other way. Datsun 200 SX. Datsun 200 SX. Designers must have blinked twice before stamping the final approval, because the Datsun 200 SX looked less like a sporty coupe and more like someone tried drawing the car from memory while wearing mittens. In the glory days of the 240Z and the beloved 510, Datsun had momentum. Then came this awkward cousin, angular in all the wrong places, underwhelming from every angle. The front grille had all the flair of a budget electric razor, while the slab-sided body screamed wind tunnel testing not required. On paper, it ticked the boxes: rear-wheel drive, 2.0-liter engine, 5-speed manual. But behind the wheel, reality set in. Acceleration was more suggestion than statement. The steering felt numb, the suspension soft, and driving it spiritedly was like pushing a shopping cart full of bricks uphill. Rust didn't wait for old age either. Paint flaked like autumn leaves, and trim loosened on its own schedule. Build quality felt optional. Within a few short years, many 200SXs had already begun their quiet return to the earth. While the 70s were filled with risky design swings and wild experimentation, the 200SX made the bold decision to aim low and still miss. It wasn't just forgettable, it redefined how dull could still be disappointing. Leata Cabalero. Leata Cabalero. Every so often, someone looks at a budget car and thinks, you know what? This needs a tuxedo made out of fiberglass and regret. That's exactly how the Leata Caballero was born. Donald E. Steinbach, a dreamer from Post Falls, Idaho, took the modest Chevy Chevette, already no one's idea of a masterpiece, and gave it a makeover so outrageous it bordered on performance art. Using Bondo, resin, and an imagination untethered by restraint, he stretched the nose, added Monte Carlo-ish curves, and somehow made a compact car look both longer and less useful. The result wasn't just peculiar, it was confusing, like someone tried to design a luxury car after reading about one in a poorly translated comic book. Steinbach wasn't deterred. He built nearly 100 of these wild creations, even dabbling in pickup versions that resembled El Caminos drawn from memory. The price tag doubled that of the Chevette it was based on, which might explain why sales didn't exactly soar. But the Caballero wasn't just a commercial misfire. It was a monument to misguided ambition, a rolling reminder that in the world of car design, bold doesn't always mean beautiful, and excess doesn't guarantee success. Bricklin SV-1. Bricklin SV-1. Built for safety or built for escape artists with a sense of humor, the Bricklin SV-1 rolled onto the scene like a rejected Batmobile prototype. Gull-wing doors, plastic body panels, and all the engineering finesse of a group project gone rogue. Malcolm Bricklin, the man who brought America the Yugo and the Subaru 360, somehow decided his next act should be a sports car wrapped in fiberglass and fueled by blind optimism. From a distance, it looked futuristic, maybe even exotic, but up close, the illusion fell apart fast. The bumpers resembled melted Lego bricks, the turbine wheels screamed disco fever, and those slit-like windows, more submarine porthole than performance coupe. Mechanically, the SV-1 was chaos on wheels. Body panels warped, just sitting in the sun. The gull-wing doors, which were supposed to be the showpiece, often refused to open unless gravity or a friend with a crowbar intervened. And the electrical system, best described as an open invitation to spontaneous combustion. In the end, the SV-1 became a cult classic for all the wrong reasons. It didn't revolutionize the car world, but it sure gave it a story worth telling, if only for the laughs. Buick Riviera. Buick Riviera. Design trends can be cruel, but Buick in 1970 took it personally. What had once been a sleek, commanding personal luxury coupe suddenly looked like it had been left too close to a bonfire and started drooping under the pressure. Just a year earlier, the Riviera stood proud. Long hood, crisp lines, and that hidden headlight coolness that whispered confidence without shouting. Then the redesign arrived, dragging behind it an identity crisis dressed in chrome. The front grille looked like it was slipping off its mounts. The rear fender skirts resembled something grown in a damp basement, and the stance lost its edge in a puddle of bloated curves. This wasn't a bold reinvention. It was a misstep in slow motion. Buyers took one look and walked away. Sales sank, and Buick was left cleaning up a mess that felt both embarrassing and entirely avoidable. The Riviera had gone from muscle luxury icon to something that belonged in a retirement brochure. Mercifully, Buick found its way back a year later with the infamous boat tail model. Not everyone loved it, but at least it had some guts. The 1970 Riviera, on the other hand, was a beautiful mistake, minus the beauty. Ford Thunderbird, trying too hard to look tough. That's exactly what the 1970 Ford Thunderbird did when it ditched its sleek, suave roots and strutted into showrooms wearing a massive chrome beak. The nose wasn't just big, it was theatrical, like the designers confused muscle car with costume party. From certain angles, it looked more like a Pelican on wheels than a personal luxury coupe. The T-Birds of the late 60s had that cool, effortless vibe. They didn't scream for attention, they earned it. But this version, it practically begged you to notice, and not for the right reasons. The elongated front, mismatched rear proportions, and awkward stance made it feel like two different cars bolted together after an argument. Underneath the flare was still a capable car, sure, but the styling distracted from everything else. Buyers weren't quite sure what they were getting. Muscle, luxury, or low-budget sci-fi prop. While sales didn't nosedive overnight, the design choices planted the seeds of decline. The Thunderbird's quiet confidence was gone, replaced by a clumsy swagger it never quite shook off. Volvo 262C. Volvo 262C. A luxury coupe shouldn't feel like a punishment for having a spine. But that's exactly what Volvo delivered with the 262C. A car born from an identity crisis, dressed in Italian tailoring. Inspired by the swaggering presence of American land yachts, like the Lincoln Continental Mark V, Volvo wanted to create a Scandinavian answer to Detroit's rolling lounges. The result wasn't quite that. Instead, they took the upright, respectable 262 GL, shipped it off to Bertone in Italy, and had them slice nearly 3 inches off the roof. What came back was a two-door that looked like it was wearing a top hat 2 sizes too small. The roofline squatted so low it seemed the car was apologizing for existing. Inside, the trimmings tried their best. Plush leather, fine wood, hints of European luxury, but none of it could erase the visual tension outside. The car looked pressed, as though the design department had lost a bet and decided to commit fully to the consequences. Yet, against all odds, Volvo sold more than 6,000 of them, because apparently, if you offer enough leather and Swedish engineering, some buyers won't mind craning their necks for the privilege. Oldsmobile Cutlass Aeroback. Oldsmobile Cutlass Aeroback. Of all the ways to bring European flair to American driveways, slapping a droopy fastback onto a mid-size Oldsmobile probably wasn't the winning ticket. But that's exactly what the folks at GM did with the Cutlass Aeroback. A car that looked less like a sleek import and more like a sedan caught mid-slide off a hot plate. In their rush to mimic hatchback trends without actually committing to a hatchback, they birthed something that wasn't quite a fastback, wasn't really a coupe, and absolutely wasn't what anyone asked for. It had a standard trunk, sure, but from the curb, it fooled nobody. The awkward slope drew puzzled glances and even more puzzled sales figures. Customers didn't flock, they fled. GM's decision to skip a conventional sedan at launch didn't help. By the time they course-corrected with a more traditional roofline, the damage was already done. The two-door Aeroback awkwardly limped along until 81, like a failed experiment someone forgot to cancel. Today, it serves as a perfect reminder that good intentions mean little if the execution leaves people wondering whether they're looking at progress or a design prank. Don't forget to subscribe and share your remembers with someone who would love to learn more about this fascinating era. As always, thank you so much for watching.